Hello and welcome along to the latest Liverpool Echo Blood Red podcast. We are live on Facebook and YouTube this afternoon as we celebrate a simply stunning result and performance for the Reds against Manchester United. Liverpool's 7-0 winners at Anfield on Sunday. I still can't quite believe that it happened, but myself, Matt Addison, Paul Gorst, Theo Squires and Keifer MacDonald all saw it unfold in front of our very eyes. As we are live, make sure you do get your comments in as we go along. We'll try and get a few of those on screen. If you're listening back later on, I'm sure you'll savour it just as much as we will now. And Gorsty, I'll come to you first on this one. It's one of those matches that you don't quite know where to start with, to be honest. It's almost impossible to try and sum up what happened at Anfield. But if you want to do your best, it's one of those that was barely believable.
Yeah, certainly second half, when Liverpool just, 4, 5, 6, and then 7, it was just like, is this really happening? It was just so weird to take in. And one of those games where, from kind of a journalist perspective, is you haven't really got anything written heading into the final 10 minutes because you don't, you think, well, Liverpool might score another 2, another 3. Obviously, Liverpool are going to be winning. That's going to be the kind of theme of your piece. But it was just kind of, this is just historic what we're watching happen in front of us here. One of the biggest ever win over Manchester United. One of the greatest days that pretty much everyone in the ground will have ever seen. So it was almost just a case of just sitting back and watching it and savouring it, and then afterwards trying to gather your thoughts and try and actually reflect on it in some sort of fairly colourful way. It was just so surreal. I don't know what you thought, Theo, but when Nunez made a 5, that was the one for me where I thought, how Liverpool scored 5 again against United. They've gone one better than the 4-0 win in April, and there was still 20 minutes left, something like that. Just a day for the ages that anyone who was privileged to be there will talk about forever, I guess. And every time that United come to Anfield now, that's going to be the highlight footage, isn't it? The reel that's going to be rolled off. Liverpool just plundering goal after goal past David De Gea. You've now scored 11 times past him in the last 2 visits to Anfield. And for all the talk of United being this kind of rejuvenated club, Liverpool, for all the talk of them having a horrendous season, they're only 7 points behind them now, aren't they? And you're thinking, well, can Liverpool even catch them? It's just the way the last few weeks have kind of worked out from Liverpool's perspective. They've taken, 13 points from the last 15 available, and talk of top 4 gathers momentum and all that. But I think it probably does the performance and the result a little bit of a disservice if you kind of frame it within the what does it mean for the top 4, because it was just a one-off result that we may never see again in our lifetime. So let's just talk about how good and how great that was, how good the players were, how great the fans were. Just an absolutely historic day, and we thought the 5-0 at Old Trafford last season was memorable, but this was on a new level for me, and just incredible.
I think Gorsty hit the nail on the head when he did his verdict, and he was saying, you think of Liverpool vintage performance of yesteryear, the ones that we grow up on hearing about, the Nottingham Forest 5-0, the Tottenham Hotspur 7-0. Like, we're all younger Liverpool fans. Their Premier League win was the first time we'd seen them lift the title. But for the likes of Rich Garnett, Doyley, former colleague Dan Kay, they always go on about the Tottenham games, the Forest games. These are the ones they grew up in, and it has to be a special league game for you to remember it, really, when you think of that vintage Liverpool era from the 70s and 80s. You remember the European games more than those. So this is that league game that will stand out for an entire generation of Liverpool fans. Like, they've had a few that have been, I suppose, close to it, like the 4-1 at Old Trafford and these couple of United wins over the past year or so. But you almost take it for granted because it's at a time when Liverpool have been winning all these trophies now, and then that 4-1, it's like, they didn't win the league, so it isn't really that important. But given the season they've just had, where they're not at their best, and they can still go and put in a performance like that against their bitter rivals and just make a mockery of them, it makes it one of those games that we will always remember, and it just makes the 4-0 and the 5-0 from last year look that little bit smaller. Like 7 is a new blow completely, isn't it? It seems quite surreal when you look at this season. Liverpool have won games 7-1, 7-0, 9-0, and the goal difference, I know 7-1 was in Europe, and the goal difference is still quite low. They've been really leaky defensively. Alisson's now got the same number of clean sheets as De Gea, and he's in contention for the Golden Glove. It is quite a surreal season for Liverpool, and I suppose it's quite fitting. It's a surreal result for us to reflect on here. It wasn't as shocking for me as the 5-0, because I think like you're all giddy when that 5-0 is happening because you're not expecting it at all. But then when Liverpool get the first 2 or 3, you think, oh, it's just another one of these days. And it's like, how far can they push it? But yeah, that second half was something else. And I think it showed Liverpool how good they can be. Like the midfield had its energy back. The defence was so solid. And this new front three is just clicking superbly at the moment. Like they've started 4 games together in these specific roles. So I'm not including the games when Nunez is a striker and Gakpo's on the left. They've got 4 goals each across those, with Salah getting 4 assists and Nunez getting an assist as well. It's just what you want to see. It's what we've wanted to see from them all season long. And I suppose it's better late than never with 2 months of the season remaining. But yeah, it's one we'll probably need to do an hour and a half talking about this. We're not going to go on for that long on the Facebook Live. But yeah, I'll let Keifer have a go now because we're all going to be just going on about this forever.
Yeah, very much feels like one of those that we could just talk and talk and talk, doesn't it, Keifer? I mean, Erik ten Hag spoke before the match about the pitch being the same size, the ball still has air in it and all the rest of it. But when it came to it, United just couldn't cope with the intensity and Liverpool were just completely relentless.
Yeah, it's absolutely that. And it's quite funny, actually, because my mum texted me after the game. She actually borrowed my Sky login to watch it. And she texted me after the game and she was like, she said to me, she's been to Anfield a couple of times kind of thing. And she was like, what is it about Anfield? Like, why do so many great managers kind of come? And I sent her the quote of Ten Hag that kind of did the rounds after his press conference last week. And she was like, well, surely he wasn't that silly to believe that Anfield would just be, like another league game kind of thing. But I said to my mum, you're kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't, because if he comes out swinging and says, we know what it's going to be like and, we're going to have to combat it and stuff like that, well, it kind of sends the wrong message to his players. But I suppose he can only really play it down, can't he? But I suppose obviously no one was expecting that kind of capitulation from United yesterday. I mean, obviously in the last couple of months, especially since the World Cup, they've kind of been on the ascendancy. And, as we said on Friday, actually, I think Gorst said he wasn't, completely convinced by United. And I think you mentioned, Matt, some of the runs they've had in some of the cup competitions as well. But at the end of the day, you can only beat what's in front of you. And that's, something Liverpool did in the Cups last year. And obviously you get kind of rewarded for it. But I mean, for kind of all the parallels, and I've seen people say, in with Liverpool struggling, and I think I said it on Friday as well, that it shows that you're never too far away. But this was like, as bad as Liverpool have been at times this season, I'd say that there's never a right way to lose games like this. But the one thing you could never question about everyone on the pitch is that they've always given their all. And I think the way United, again, there's no perfect way to lose a game like that, but I think the way United lost yesterday was it just showed the chalk and cheese between them and kind of the characters they had on the pitch, Fernandes and his antics and the way he kind of conducted himself and carried himself as a captain. And you think, can you imagine if that was, if that had happened at Old Trafford? I know Liverpool lost there earlier in the season and there was some questionable defending. But you look at when Sancho scored that goal and Milner and Van Dijk kind of rally each other, didn't they? And there was a few words exchanged then. And obviously a lot was made of that at the time in terms of, was a friction and that. But that's kind of the reaction you'd want to see, going down to your, as Theo says, your bitter rivals. You can see the goal. You want people dragging each other and pulling each other and kind of calling out each other on the pitch. But I mean, yesterday for each goal, I was in the Kop and obviously, watching De Gea pick the ball out the net 6 times in the second half. And there was just no one there to kind of grab a hold of anyone and say, like, lads, this is 3 or 4-0. And I think with that 5-0 the other year, I think when Salah obviously gets his hat-trick, Liverpool were, took their foot off the gas and it could have easily been 7 or 8 that day, I think. And I think that 5-0 was actually, as crazy as it sounds, I think that kind of did United. It was a kind of compliment to United in a sense. And I think there was loads of people in the away end that day thinking, we'll never get a better opportunity to put 6, 7, 8 past them. But yesterday it was just relentless. It reminded me of that game against City in Europe in the Kiev run. And, just the kind of the barrage of goals in quick kind of bursts, and they just had no answers. And I don't think even the players really, they were just kind of laughing. I mean, I was just stood there laughing. I mean, I'm glad I didn't have to write something like Gorsty 1,000 words, just after the whistle. But I mean, what can you say in a situation like that? I mean, the players just felt like everything. I think from the second goal to the 4th goal, I think it was 4 attacks, 4 goals kind of thing. Everything kind of just fell into their path, and everything they tried just went in. It was just one of those moments. It was so historic, and as Theo says, it will certainly be one of those where in years to come, you remember where you are, who you watched it with, what you did, and all that kind of thing. Like, as he says, we've had the European ones that have kind of gone up there with Inter Milan and Saint Etienne. We've had those in recent years, but in terms of like a real a highlight reel of Premier League games. We've maybe missed that. Obviously, you think of the United one in January 2020, but there's been victories over City here and there. But in terms of like a real statement, Premier League or league victory kind of thing, that is going to be the benchmark now of, the all-time great Liverpool performances. And, it was just a pleasure to be able to witness it. And, after everything that's gone on this season, it's no more than these players deserve after, some questions at times rightly have been asked of them. But, I mean, that's, exactly, so certainly one way to respond to critics, isn't it?
Yeah, it was just a perfect performance all the way across the pitch, Gorsty. We'll come to a number of players across the course of the next sort of half an hour or so, but it's probably right that we start with Mohamed Salah. Obviously, more broken records for him, broken records for Liverpool. An incredible performance from him. Obviously, the turn for Lisandro Martinez on its own has done the rounds on Twitter and social media. The goals, the quality of his performance, that was absolutely peak Salah once again.
Yeah, you sound like a broken record talking about the records that he's broken. And I've seen a tweet, I think it might have been the Anfield Wrap, saying, has Mohamed Salah broken a record for the amount of records that he's broken while he's been at Liverpool, which I thought was good. Yeah, it was quite fitting, wasn't it, that Robbie Fowler was there at the game yesterday watching on, no doubt full of admiration for seeing his record finally overtaken. What I always thought was interesting was Salah. I don't know when he said it, maybe quite recently, that when he joined Liverpool, that was in his head straight away. He wanted to be Liverpool's all-time leading scorer in the Premier League. And talk about, setting the goals high. He hasn't come in and thought, well, I'll just try and settle my feet and try and get a good few months under my belt and see how it goes. He was targeting that from day one. And it's testament to his to everything about him, really, his dedication to his craft. He does everything right off the pitch. He has those kind of recovery sessions after games, make sure that he eats right, he's sleeping enough, and just an utter pro, just totally devoted to it all. And these are the results that he's getting. And I think it was, well, I know for a fact it was one of the issues, or rather it was a kind of non-issue for Liverpool giving him the new contract, despite the fact that he just turned 30. Was the fact that they were convinced that, he looks after himself so well that he can play until he's, 34, 35, 36. The game's kind of changing in terms of what elite players are able to do longer into their career. And a lot of that is down to the sports science and the way that they're looking after themselves more than ever before. And you're seeing Lionel Messi, kind of, the talisman for Argentina going to win the World Cup. I think he's 35 in May. Cristiano Ronaldo was still scoring Premier League goals last season, wasn't he? And even this season, he's 38, coming up to 39. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is still there at AC Milan at the age of 40. So these types of players have proven that you can still be a superstar of the game well into your 30s. And Mohamed Salah is definitely going to be in that bracket. I'm convinced he's going to be 31 in June. He's going to finish Liverpool's top scorer again this season. He's got 22 now, has he, for the season in all competitions? No doubt he'll have that 30 target in his mind. Whether he can get it or not, we'll see. But yeah, you can't speak highly enough of what he's done to the football club. And when he leaves, I think when he leaves will be when you really appreciate what he's done. While it's happening around you, you're just kind of talking all the plaudits and all the praise. But I think it'll only be when he's left that you can look back. I think that fella was special and one of the greatest that we've ever seen. So yeah, fair play to him, because for his dedication, I think he deserves those awards. And he's an absolute legend.
Well, look at it this way: if he gets the 30-goal barrier this year, he overtakes Robbie Fowler in the all-time charts, and he goes level with Steven Gerrard on 186. That puts him joint fifth. If he has another 30-goal season next year, he potentially overtakes Billy Liddell on 228 as Liverpool's fourth all-time leading goal scorer. And then that contract expires in 2025. Gordon Hodgson's on 241 in third. He could realistically be, say he gets an extension as well, Liverpool's third all-time leading goal scorer by the time he makes it. Was it a day at Anfield? It's just if you're saying a player has to go until his mid-30s at Liverpool. Never mind if he goes as a Ronaldo or Messi or a Zlatan, going up until his late 30s. I don't think anyone expects him to be Ian Rush's record or Roger Hunt's. But he is right up there, isn't he, with Liverpool's greatest ever legends. Like Gorst said, he's someone who really will appreciate it when he's gone.
Yeah, it feels very much like he's got a massive role to play Keifer alongside the two players next to him. We'll come back to Darwin Nunez in a second as well, but Cody Gakpo, it felt to me like a real breakout performance from him. Obviously, a couple of days after we learned that Roberto Firmino was moving on in the summer, it just felt like perfect timing, didn't it, for Cody Gakpo to step up and put in what was an incredibly Roberto Firmino type performance with a couple of goals there as well.
Yeah, it was so fitting, wasn't it? That Firmino announcement, came, let's say, late last week, and then Gakpo, if you're thinking of a game, especially, with all the kind of transfer rumours that he's had himself with United over the past, 12 months or so, and then obviously you throw Firmino's future into that, and the performance from the pair of them was absolutely amazing. But I think Gakpo is such a difficult role, and again, not that my mum's any insight, but she really likes Firmino. She's always had a soft spot for him, so. When I told her that he was leaving, she was, there'll never be another Firmino like that, and that is true to an extent. No matter how good, the next player who comes through the door is, or how good Cody Gakpo is in terms of that skill set and that kind of uniqueness that Firmino has brought to Liverpool over the past 8 years. There'll never be someone like that, and I think obviously Liverpool will realise that in due course. But what Gakpo's doing is obviously, is probably as close as you can get to. Firmino in the past couple of weeks, and after a difficult start, I think that when he joined, obviously Liverpool were quite low on confidence, and it was if you think of when Diaz joined, and there was all those kind of comparisons this year, wasn't he? If you could have the same impact and maybe kind of give Liverpool that shot in the arm, but I just think there were two completely different situations, and then you factor that into that he's been kind of reinvented into this kind of false nine role, which he didn't play much in during his time at PSV Eindhoven. So if you think how much he's come on in the last 10, 12 games, it is massive. And I was so happy that he got both the goals yesterday. I mean, the second goal was just absolutely absurd. How he gets in from that near angle. I think a few people have said it's really similar to that Coutinho goal at Old Trafford in Europe all those years ago. But yeah, it was just such a complete performance. And I was just actually writing something before we came on here, just how he kind of linked up with Robertson. At times it was, I know it was a 4-3-3 on paper, but it was, Nunez and Salah were almost like the two up top, and they kind of pinned Dalot and Shaw back, and then it kind of gave Elliott and Gakpo that space in kind of those half spaces, between the midfield and the attack, where they just both, especially Elliott in the second half, just absolutely excelled. And it was a glimpse into the future, if you like, after the kind of the last 12 months. Obviously Mane's gone, and then obviously there's been question marks over Salah at times this season, and then obviously now Firmino's gone, but the way they kind of all responded yesterday with 2 goals apiece, it kind of really said that, as Gorsty says, obviously you've got Salah on this new contract, and obviously after the kind of with the service he's given Liverpool over the years, obviously deserves it. But it is like this kind of new look front three, this kind of new era for Liverpool. And then obviously you throw Diogo Jota in there. I'm sure he'll kind of end his goal drought in the coming weeks. And then obviously you throw, Luis Diaz in there, and then all of a sudden you can see this kind of gradual rebuild over the forward line that's, probably taken place over the last 24 months or so. Is, all of a sudden that's ticked off the checklist, and then you can move on to other areas of the squad this summer. And all of a sudden Liverpool are far closer than people have made out at points this season, where you're thinking there's a complete overhaul, and that players should be dragged out of Anfield as such. The situation looks far healthier for Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp, and it really kind of gives you that kind of motivation that they can go again next season and maybe get back to the best that we saw last year. So yeah, it was a complete display from Gakpo and and everyone else in the front line.
Yeah, there's still plenty more to come, isn't there, Gorsty, in terms of all of these players. When you think that Luis Diaz is a couple of weeks away from possibly coming back as well, you think Diogo Jota isn't quite up to speed yet, but he will regain that sharpness. You just look at all of the options that Jurgen Klopp has in that attack. It's absolutely terrifying.
Yeah, it is, undoubtedly. I don't think we're going to see the best of Luis Diaz this season now. I think he's been out for too long. By the time he comes back, we're going to be entering the last sort of 6 to 8 weeks of the season. So I think we might have to wait to see him next season. Similar kind of theme for Jota. He's obviously missed quite a lot of football, but generally the long-term future is looking really bright, isn't it? We spoke about Firmino on Friday's pod, and I was a little bit... I'd be a little bit dismayed if Firmino leaves and they don't look to bring in any sort of replacement. On the one hand, at least. On the other hand, I'm thinking, there's only really one Firmino, and finding a kind of adequate replacement is probably going to set you back X amount of millions at a time when there's maybe other areas that need a rebuild. That's why I was kind of hopeful that there might be another little 1-year extension to his contract, and he's accepted that he might not be playing every week, but he's still got an important part to play. But that isn't to be the case. So Liverpool are going to be kind of one short in the forward options next season. Maybe the hope is that Fabio Carvalho can kick on. We haven't really seen too much of that in his debut season for various reasons. A lot of them not necessarily down to him, but yeah, generally Liverpool's forward options are exciting, aren't they? You know, you look at when it all clicks and it all comes together like it did yesterday. Liverpool have got so many different facets to their attack. They've also got Mo Salah, who remains one of the absolute very best players in the world. Darwin Nunez, for me, is slowly becoming an integral part of that front line. I think in time he's going to become one of the world class forwards in the world. And Cody Gakpo is starting to show, you know, why Liverpool are so keen to bring him in. It looks like they're kind of reinventing him into a bit of a Firmino light or a Firmino Mark II. And yesterday was a sensational performance. Really, that second half, he just had the bit between his teeth, and he was absolutely on fire, wasn't he? That goal that Keifer mentions there, the third one, I thought that was the pick of the bunch, where he starts to move off, continues his run, and then just kind of flicks it first time past the hair. It was a sensational goal after Mo Salah had sent Lisandro Martinez for the Sunday Echo. It was a superb goal, and Nunez's goals were predatory, weren't they? You know, in the 6-yard box headers, you know, not necessarily something he's done too much of this season. But yeah, everywhere you look now across Liverpool's forward line for the long term, it looks really exciting, and it's going to be really interesting to watch it unfold. Obviously, we're seeing the kind of rebuild, aren't we, in front of our eyes? You know, Mane's left, Firmino is on his way, and it's going to be a sad day when, you know, 2/3 of that iconic forward line are no longer there. But there's enough to be excited about with the lads who've come in to replace them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was the big takeaway for me, Theo, in terms of what we saw, was that it just sort of raises that excitement again for what the next Liverpool is going to look like. We know they've still got to do work in the midfield, of course, but the midfield was excellent yesterday. The rest of the team was perfect as well. It was just one of those that makes you realise, like Keifer said before, they're not a million miles away. They do a couple of things in the summer, and you can quite easily see them coming back and being at the very, very best again next season.
Yeah, it's been a strange season this year when you think of the World Cup in the middle of it. We can look at Man City and they're not quite at it compared to their previous heights. Obviously, they're at least in title contention, unlike Liverpool. And we had the doom and gloom of January and February, but most of those games were in the Cups looking back. There's been enough building blocks there with the players coming back from injury now to be positive again. And like this front three, it's clicking so well, and 2/3 of it are still so young with their best years miles ahead of them. Luis Diaz, I agree with what Gorst is saying, probably not going to see the best of him this season, but then you can use that dreaded cliche like a new signing for next year. And whatever they do with the midfield, we were thinking 2-3 new signings maybe, they could still bring that in, but now you've still got Harvey Elliott though, who's made himself look like a midfielder again. You've got Basetic, who's didn't even start yesterday. Henderson and Fabinho in superb form. And it's quite nice that this game yesterday, it's against someone who, in Casemiro, who's been their foe a few times over the years in these Champions League finals. And it's like maybe that Liverpool don't have the players quite at that level. Well, they made him look silly at times. It was one of the goals where Elliott intercepts it, then both of them are just pretty much right on top of Casemiro and to help get it away. I think it was for the second goal for Nunez's header from Elliott's cross, but it's like you wanted that bit more energy in the midfield. And then Konate, he's another player who's so young, comes back in at centre-back in him, and Van Dijk. It makes Liverpool's defence look so solid. And Trent's still young, but Robertson's still young. Addison's a good age for a goalkeeper. He's got his best years ahead of him still. And if they're going to bring in 3, 4, 5 new signings in the summer, it's certainly enough time there to be positive. And usually we're used to Liverpool bringing in new players, and they take a little bit of time to bed in, a little time to gel, get used to Klopp's style. You think of Robertson or Fabinho. Well, these recent hitters are making an impact straight away, whether it's Nunez, Gakpo, Diaz. I know both Klopp and Linders have been on the record this year saying every single signing they make, they have to get it right. Well, they are getting these right. And when you think of an attacking revamp they've done over the last 12 months, Nunez, Gakpo, Diaz, all making these instant impacts. Now they're clicking in this team. Thinking if Julian Ward can do that with the front three, what's he got in store for the midfield? We will wait and see. It'll be exciting times for Liverpool.
Yeah, it certainly is. It was certainly an exciting performance from Harvey Elliott, Keifer. I've got to mention him specifically and talk about him. I don't think many Liverpool fans maybe would have picked him in their team, but Jurgen Klopp certainly got that decision right. He was all over the pitch, defensively excellent, created a lot of things as well, and just a real landmark performance, I'd say, for him as well on the day.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm right. I certainly didn't have him in my team. I had Henderson coming back in and Bajcetic and Fabinho. I think Theo might have had him in his team. I think I give him that one. But yeah, I mean, considering the kind of outcry before the game that, an 18-year-old lad wasn't starting and kind of it felt like all Liverpool's midfield hopes kind of pinned on him. It kind of, to go from that to then, 2 hours later, the kind of rave reviews Elliott was getting is, it just shows you how fast things can change in football and also how short memoried people are in the sense of, Elliott was brilliant against City in the 1-0 victory at Anfield earlier in the season. And I know he's obviously, he struggled at the start of the year at Brentford especially, but, in the games he's played kind of since then, in the Cups and whatever, he's looked better further forward. But I suppose it was maybe that discipline that people were maybe worried about yesterday. And we talked a lot on Friday, didn't we, about that right-hand side. And, if Liverpool got that right and, made United play on their terms, that's their greatest strength. And that's certainly what they did. And Elliott was key to that. He was everywhere. And, I think he started well. And obviously the crowd was, really up for the game. And then I think probably about midway through the first half, I think he maybe lost his way a bit. But then I think coming out for the second half, I think the goal helped everyone and kind of just calmed a few nerves down. It was obviously the perfect time to score. And then obviously gets the assist, doesn't he, for the second one? And for the third one, but the second one, again, it kind of just after half time, it kind of, gives Liverpool almost a free hit in a sense of, it's the two worst times to concede, aren't they, for United? And then after that, I just thought he flourished and he was everywhere. And, it's kind of what we've wanted to see from him. And obviously it's been a difficult season because he has played so much. I don't think, in a normal season, a player of his age, will be taken in and out of the limelight and, you probably pick and choose his games, but he hasn't had that luxury at times this season. And then obviously you think about what he went through last season, again, with the injury and stuff. It has been a difficult 2 years for him. He's kind of gone from one extreme of not playing to probably playing too much. And, he's obviously never going to be the guy who comes and says, I need a break or I've played too much kind of thing. He is living his dream as a boyhood Liverpool fan. So I think that was the pleasing thing for him is that, he kind of had that moment. And he was, like I say, he was everywhere. He was in the face of Bruno Fernandes, and he was just a menace, both defensively and as Theo said, he was intercepting for the second or third goal, whichever one it was. He gets an assist as well. I think he had the most interception or the most ball recoveries or something I read yesterday, and he just kind of, I think everyone knows what talent he is in the final third, and he can offer Liverpool something different. But I think there was that other side of his game that people have had reservations about in recent months, and I think that was the perfect, no better way to send a kind of a message out of, look, I'm here, this is how good I can be. All the talk has obviously been about Bajcetic and rightly so, but I think maybe people have forgotten what a gem Liverpool do have in Harvey Elliott. And I think whenever you listen to anyone at the club, speak about him, whether that be players or kind of, Jurgen Klopp or Pep Linders, there's a reason they speak so highly of him. They're not paying him lip service. And, on a day where kind of Mo Salah broke his record, this is someone who's kind of tried to follow in his footsteps and kind of, pick up the kind of dedication and the small details, maybe off the pitch and the recovery and the diet and for that kind of all to come into play and kind of deliver that performance is a testament to kind of the work that he's put in. So yeah, I was really pleased with him and shout out to the other two lads in midfield as well. Henderson, again, I thought was maybe a bit unsettled at first. There was a few, rugby kicks, whatever you want to call them, drop kicks early in the first half where, Liverpool couldn't really get out. But then after that, again, they were brilliant and it really helped Fabinho's cause as well. I think getting legs in and around him because he, even though he got booked quite early on, he had another fantastic game. So yeah, it was in terms of midfield again, after all the kind of outcry and the kind of issues that we've kind of pointed out this season, it was a really convincing performance.
Yeah, the midfield balance looked really, really good, particularly obviously in that second half, but in the first half as well. I thought Liverpool were on top, despite what Gary Neville might have thought after the game. But we've got to talk about Fabinho as well, Gorsty. I think he was really fundamental to that. I think that was probably his best game for months and months now, really, if we're being honest. Obviously, part of that is that he's been well below par, but I think it was the third goal where he snaps into a tackle with Casemiro and then plays that ball over the top. That's what you want to see from Fabinho.
It was his best game since Wolves.
Yeah, best game since the last one. Continued a bit of a theme for him, didn't it, this week? He's had a really good week. And Liverpool need him to show between now and the end of the season whether he's going to be part of the revolution or not, I guess. Some suggestions that he's a potentially sellable asset for Liverpool this summer. So if he wants to stay, maybe he's got to pull his finger out, and he's certainly been doing that lately. I thought, the goal you mentioned, it was at the second. Was it Nunez's header where he kind of keeps it alive?
Second one in the second half. Was it the third one? I think.
The third one was Gakpo, wasn't it? Where Gakpo plays it to Salah, and see this how much of an incredible win it was. We were struggling to remember when the goals went in. I think it was the second where he keeps it alive. He kind of wrestles with Casemiro and flicks it over to Salah and Elliott, and then the cross comes in. He was excellent, and to be fair, all the midfielders were. I had my reservations about Elliott starting the game. I think I said it in our match blog beforehand. I wasn't too sure whether this was the right game for him, and I wasn't too sure in general whether central midfield is his position at a time when Liverpool have generally struggled. But I thought it was his best game for Liverpool, full stop. I thought probably before then his best game was at Tottenham, but he was outstanding, Harvey Elliott, and so Fabinho alongside him. Two completely different types of midfielders, but both really showed what they've got to offer yesterday, I thought. And there was some statistic, actually. Doyle pointed it out to me last night. I can't remember off the top of my head, actually. But basically, that midfield three of Fabinho, Henderson and Elliott, don't think they've lost the game when they've started for Liverpool this season. And they seem to have scored quite a fair few goals as well. So for all the questions that have rightly come this season for Liverpool in that area of the pitch, this, for now, seems to be the trio that Klopp has to settle on, I guess. And Bajcetic has done nothing wrong, but he's a really solid option to have. And then maybe in a couple of weeks we'll start to learn a little bit more about Thiago's development, coming back from his injury. So I think I said it on Friday's pod. Things are just starting to come together for Liverpool at just the right time. They're now up to fifth. They're only 3 points behind Tottenham. They've got that game in hand. They've obviously still got to play Tottenham as well. So I think you're foolish now if you're saying anything other than Liverpool for a top four finish. I really do. But apart from all that, yesterday was just a one of a kind, once in a lifetime result, wasn't it? And I'm sure the Liverpool fans were drinking the bars dry, across the city at full time, and fair play to them. Who can blame them after that?
Yeah, I think the stat in the midfield is that though that midfield three has started 5 games this season, they've scored 28 times in that season and won all 5. But yeah, some incredible performances all the way across the pitch. We're going to talk Andy Robertson next, Theo, because I thought he was arguably the man of the match. He was exceptional. The pass for the opening goal was brilliant, but pretty much everything he did was absolutely spot on in the game. I think we definitely have to talk about him as well. That performance definitely is deserving of that.
Yeah, it was Klopp, I think, covered it quite well in his post-match press conference, because he was saying we all saw how well Kostas Tsimikas played in midweek, but Robbo is Robbo. And he was certainly well rested after getting the Wolves game off, and he comes in and puts in a performance like that. It's one of these cases where Liverpool provide genuine competition for a player, and you do get a little bit more out of them to make sure he's holding on to his place. It was a superb assist for that opening goal, and you just like how he waits, he points where he wants Gakpo to make the run, and it just came to perfection. He was probably unlucky not to get a goal in the game. He could probably be a little bit aggrieved that both his chances fell on his weaker right foot, but he was getting forward so well. And I think he was really benefited from the system, because as much as it was the front three of Gakpo as a false 9 down the middle with Nunez on the left cutting in, Nunez was more central than we've seen him in recent weeks. I think they were trying to get him to target Martinez a little bit at times and then cause Varane some nuisance. We saw Gakpo in the midfield, but that just left that left wing completely free for Robertson to sprint up, and he had so much space to do with it what he wanted. I'm not sure if anyone saw Match of the Day last night, but it certainly helped that Anthony just didn't want to really run back inside his own half at all. So he had even more space with no one picking him up. He's one of the best crossers in the Premier League, and he's one of the best attacking fullbacks in the Premier League. If you give him that space and those opportunities, he's going to do this. Just got to hope that the little knock he took to his ankle when that idiot ran on the pitch isn't going to keep him out for any length of time, because when he's in form, he's one of your first names on the team sheet. I think there was it Richard Keys? I think Doyle covered this in his analysis. He was saying he's past his best, he's on the decline. he's actually that little bit younger than all the rest of the players. So Robertson's just entering his peak here. He might have been out of form at times in a poor season for Liverpool, but the best is still ahead of him.
Yeah, he was absolutely exceptional. The whole defence didn't put a foot wrong, Keifer, as well. I think it makes a huge difference with Ibrahim Konate there. Trent was excellent. Obviously, the goalkeeper behind him. We've not seen that back five too many times this season for Liverpool, but whenever they're together, you can see why that's the first choice.
Yeah, exactly that. And, it's been a difficult one for Konate, hasn't it, really? Because, he's hardly had a run in the team this season, obviously for kind of various injuries. And obviously then the World Cup kind of broke that partnership up again. So it's been a difficult one for him. But, after the first season he had at Liverpool last year, I think everyone knows, or, certainly everyone kind of expects the defender that he's going to become is kind of, the one that ultimately probably takes Van Dijk's place. But at the moment, obviously those two with kind of Joe Gomez and Joel Matip, like, massively out of form. It's Van Dijk and Konate is Liverpool's strongest partnership at the moment, and then obviously Trent AlexanderArnold was incredible again, as both fullbacks were. I think it was 5 or 6-0, I can't remember, but the tackle on Rashford, and it just absolutely brilliant, completely gets the ball, and kind of I think the thing that struck me is kind of how determined they were to keep a clean sheet. Sometimes you see it when teams are maybe get a bit excited at 5, 6, 7. And they might concede a sloppy one or whatever, but you could tell how much it meant, especially Ellison. But that whole back five, and that's such a great mentality to have, especially as I said earlier, as you kind of look at the mentality that was on display from United over the course of everything yesterday, as Theo says, from Anthony not even wanting to kind of engage in a battle, to kind of Fernandes and his antics, to kind of even De Gea's response every time he's picking the ball out the back of the net. But you look at Liverpool, and as I say, even when things haven't been going their way this season, that kind of not belief, obviously that's been trained at times, but that kind of I don't know, that you've still seen signs of that kind of endeavour, and they've wanted to make things right, even if things haven't paid off for them and maybe haven't gone their way and stuff like that. There's still kind of that underlying foundations that has been so key to kind of everything Jurgen Klopp's achieved over the past 5, 6, 7 years, and I thought that was perfectly kind of summed up in kind of their endeavour to keep a clean sheet. And I think Alisson's, what is he on now, 10 for the season? I think he's I think Pope's leading the way. I think Pope and Ramsdale is it. So there's every chance he could be getting himself another Golden Glove at the end of the campaign. But if Konate and Van Dijk can kind of keep themselves fit, and you'd hope so now after they've obviously, I know Van Dijk said last week, didn't he? That he kind of burnt himself into the ground prior to the World Cup, and he maybe wasn't at his best in the first half of the season, but he was brilliant yesterday. And obviously Konate's come back from his issues, and he's had 2 really strong performances. So you just hope now if Liverpool can really just keep those 2 at kind of the base of the team. Again, you'd be stupid to rule Liverpool out of kind of clinching that 4th spot, and maybe even higher. Who knows? Be interesting to see kind of how United respond. They've got a game on Thursday, but in the kind of the long term, what does this do to? Obviously, Ten Hag's responded well, hasn't he, at times? But there's every chance that Liverpool can probably catch United up and do what they did a few seasons ago, where they kind of pipped them to 3rd place.
Yeah, the 5 clean sheets in a row, Gorsty, is massive, isn't it? You've got to have that solid base to build upon, and that's when the attack comes into its own. Keep a clean sheet at one end. On this occasion, score 7, but you only need 1 to win.
Yeah, and it's no coincidence that it's happened when Van Dijk's come back into the team. Obviously, Matip and Gomez kept that clean sheet against Everton, but with respect to Everton, it was just Ellis Sims up front, wasn't it, on that night? And they didn't really get too many bodies running beyond the lone striker that night, so that was relatively comfortable. But Van Dijk's been sensational for me, certainly since the last 2 or 3 games. And Konate's return has just come at the right time, hasn't it? At a time when Gomez and Matip, for various reasons, have really tailed off form-wise, making too many basic errors. Konate's come back in and he's been fantastic. And I think now you do have last season for me, it was always a bit of a toss-up between Konate and Matip over who's going to be the partner for Van Dijk. And if anything, I've probably just edged or leaned towards Matip. But now I think you do have a really settled, kind of defined first choice back 5 for Liverpool with Trent and Robertson and obviously Ellison. And I think I might have said it on Friday as well, that if they can keep Konate fit and Van Dijk and Fabinho, continues on with what he's shown over the last week, that kind of defensive triangle, if you like, with Fabinho sitting in front of the back 2, is going to be so important to allow Liverpool to just build everything from that, with the fullbacks and the other midfielders kind of getting about the pitch. So yeah, all things are positive, aren't they, at the moment? And that hasn't always been the case. Certainly since the beginning of January, we've reflected on some really awful performances and results, haven't they? Brentford, Wolves, Brighton a couple of times. So it's only right that we probably give praise to some who deserve it, to be fair. So it's just, as I said at the kind of top of the show, it's just an incredible result, wasn't it? And I'm even kind of reluctant to start looking a little bit ahead to what's coming up and what it means, because we know there's some massive games on the horizon with Chelsea and City and Arsenal and obviously Bournemouth at the weekend. But I just encourage supporters and listeners to just enjoy today as much as possible, because 7-0 against Manchester United doesn't happen every year, does it? Although Liverpool have made a good fist of it in recent years. Just an incredible couple of days for Liverpool FC.
Yeah, that's exactly it, isn't it, Theo? For the longer term, it will raise confidence. It does give them a boost in terms of the top four race. But fundamentally, I'm sure that the players, if not the fans and everybody else, will just be relishing in it for as long as they can.
Yeah, they will. It's one where we say it doesn't happen every year, but now you're thinking, how much will we thrash them by next year? Just want to play them every week at this rate. They just happened to be all of a sudden this fixture that Liverpool get the best out of them from, and United seem to crumble in. Get the DVD out, get the T-shirts out, get the mugs out. I'm sure the club shop or some of the fan accounts will be getting plenty of merchandise out of this one. I think I've already seen a few going around on social media, like Jamie Carragher and Gary Neville's faces from this one. But yeah, it's a game that a result you just want to enjoy, and hopefully it can put Liverpool back on. I'm not going to say back on the right path, because they already seem to be on the right path, but it's one they can really build on in these final months of the campaign. We thought they'd turn the corner with those couple of victories against Everton and Newcastle, and then there was that concern: what does Real Madrid do to this 5-2 humbling at Anfield, where their away fans are chanting or cheering every successful pass? Well, then less than 2 weeks later, Liverpool fans are doing the exact same thing to Manchester United. Obviously, there was concerns in that Crystal Palace game, the 0-0, where Liverpool were lucky to get a point. But now, they've managed to get it out their system. Klopp said he wasn't going to let Real Madrid impact their confidence too much, and it was about focusing on getting in the top four, squeezing every ounce, whatever you want to call it, out of this season. And you'd back them to. You were not really expecting to maybe put 7 past an Arsenal or a Man City in that mammoth week we're going to have after the international break. But you're now going into those games full of confidence. And I'm not going to put my neck on the line and say, they're going to get the goals they need at the Bernabeu. But you'd imagine they're going to not collapse as much as they did in the second half there, and at least put on a fight. It's hopefully going to be a really strong end to the season for Liverpool. We've been saying all year long, they just need to get players back from injury and turn that corner, and they can finally kickstart the campaign. It's taken a little longer than we expected, to the extent that they're not going to really win any trophies this year. But when we can say now with confidence, yes, I expect Liverpool to finish in the top 4, when that is something that we thought was gone only a month ago, and that shows how much they've turned it around in the last few weeks.
Yeah, it's one of those, isn't it, Keifer, where if you lose 5-2, you say, well, it was a one-off. We can't take too much of a confidence hit. But when you win 7-0, maybe it's one of those that you try and cling to and use that as much as possible for the next few weeks.
The only thing I'll say is you get an early goal at the Bernabeu, anything is possible. But I think exactly that is, I think as historic as it is, I think the good thing and certainly, which with so many leaders in that dressing room, and obviously the kind of figure Jurgen Klopp is, you won't allow the players to get too high, and at the same time, after the Real Madrid game, you won't have allowed them to get too low. There's a kind of a nice balance in there, and to be fair, if you kind of, again, I'm sure United will probably be saying the same. If you probably look at the first half of the Real Madrid game, and obviously the first half of yesterday, obviously they weren't 7-0 and 5-2 games. It's just obviously, as Klopp said yesterday, it's just a freak result, and that is football at times. But certainly heading into, if you're looking at the greater picture in terms of top 4, which is obviously the priority for this season. Obviously that does massive confidence boost. But in terms of that game in a few weeks, I mean, it's been a long time. It certainly feels like since Liverpool really hammered a team in that kind of manner, which they did in the second half yesterday. You're probably looking at Rangers in October, and then obviously before that, probably Bournemouth. So if just to kind of have that, everyone kind of free flowing in the final third. Obviously, goals for Salah, goals for Nunez, goals for Gakpo. The midfield doing well. Robertson getting forward again. Trent getting forward. Obviously, we laughing a joke and whatever, but just heading into that second leg, it just I'm not trying to sell anyone a dream here, but it just kind of shows that if it's not as dead as people think it is. And there's every chance that they could probably be, lose a tie, 7-4 or 7-2 or something like that, which is, perfectly fine. But just thinking in the kind of the long term of what this does, the goals are flowing again, and there's so much. Matt, I can see you're smiling. You're slowly convincing yourself here. I'm
really not.
I've slowly convinced myself that if they get one after about 15, 20 minutes, and then they get one after half time, all of a sudden, if any club can, exactly. That's the kind of that's the mentality, isn't it? And I'm sure Real Madrid will be looking at that yesterday. And I haven't looked at what the Spanish press is saying, but I'm sure they'll be a bit skeptical of completely writing Liverpool off. But no, and look, if they do go and get hammered by Madrid again, fine, fair enough. But like I said, it just kind of the goal. There was just so much to go off yesterday in terms of everything that you wanted to go right, in terms of Gakpo, in terms of Nunez, in terms of Salah, in terms of Konate, in terms of Van Dijk, in terms of Addison, in terms of Robertson. Everything went right, and I just think that breeds massive confidence between now until the end of the season. And if it helps them in Europe, so be it. If it doesn't, sound. But I just think they needed that. They needed that after the last couple of weeks. It's great kind of winning games like they did against Everton and Newcastle in that kind of manner. And you can talk about baby steps, but that was a performance of like Liverpool are back, and I think. People head into the Bernabeu in a couple of weeks, it will give them that bit of belief that they're not just going there to soak up the sun and have a few, drinks or whatever, that there is actually a fighting chance. And that's all I'll say on the matter.
Yeah, I'm not quite so convinced as you are on that score. I don't think Real Madrid and Manchester United are really comparable, but it was quite simply a sensational afternoon for Liverpool. One to savour all week long, and we'll certainly be doing that in all of the usual places. Make sure you do continue to check out all of the content on the Liverpool Echo and Liverpool.com websites. Plenty more to come throughout the week from Blood Red as well. For now, though, I'm off to watch all of those 7 goals back again. We'll catch you next time here on the Blood Red channel.